last year, during the whole killer clown craze, a few clowns on Twitter threatened to come to our school at 11 a.m. and kill us. The school picked up on this and sent out emails to parents and planned a lockdown at 10:30. Sitting in history class, I hear the familiar sound of the lockdown alarm, the teacher rushing to the windows and door, locking and closing them. To be honest, I wasn't that worried. I thought that it was just another blank thread online and nothing would happen, and my day would go back to normal. But there is still an excitement to a lockdown. After 40 minutes of silence, sitting on the cold floor in the corner of the room, the emergency green flashing light turned off, and the air conditioning slowly fell silent, and the hallway lights switched off. The school had cut the power. Why, though? At this point, me and my classmates were staring at each other. We all knew that something real was going on. After 10 minutes or so, we could all hear a faint banging noise from down the corridor, shortly followed by heavy and fast footsteps. Someone was running down the hallway. They started banging on the lockers and screamed, "I'll kill you all! Just die!" At this point, a few girls started quietly crying. Then, the most terrifying thing ever happened. One of the men, dressed as a clown, ran up to my class door, banging and screaming. Multiple people were crying now. One of my friends whispered to me, "We're all going to die." I started crying too. The man swiftly moved away from our door, and his screams slowly faded down the corridor. After another 2 hours, the principal came on the loudspeaker. Surprisingly, explaining everything, he said that just after 11, 2 men walked into the school, one holding a kitchen knife and a camera. They ran around the school, threatening to kill students, and once police raided the school, only caught one. No one was hurt. The school got over 20 buses to take the younger kids home, and the kids 9th grade and over, like me, were told to walk home in groups and call the cops if we saw anything suspicious. I had a hard week at school, thinking that the second man would return with a gun or something, but nothing happened. This, nonetheless, will be scarred into my mind forever. The second one, as far as I know, has not yet been caught, but at this point, I feel like they are not looking for him, as it's been over a year. But the thought of him still planning an attack on the school has made me a lot more cautious when walking to school. Since then, the school has hired a few on-campus police officers and have installed some auto-locking features on doors and windows. When the lockdown alarm goes off, this had made me feel a little bit better in school, but this just isn't something that you can forget about. It stays around forever. I was in my 5th period biology class. The door to my biology classroom was outside on the 2nd story, near a bridge that overlooked the senior patio, which was a large outdoor place for students to eat lunch. It was lunchtime for half of the school, so we were able to hear the students talking and laughing. It was a gloomy day, very cloudy and windy. A thunderstorm was approaching, but it hadn't started raining yet. Suddenly, the talking and laughing from the lunch patio changed. We heard the students screaming, loudly. My teacher looked out the window and she saw all of the students who were eating outside running into the second gym, which was right next to the lunch patio. Our teacher assumed there must have been a tornado, so she told us to get under our desks and cover our necks. A few seconds later, we heard the intercom turn on. A voice said, "Code Red," and the intercom hung up. Code Red means a lockdown at my school. My teacher had us all hiding in the corner, out of view of the windows. My teacher had to crawl on her stomach to lock the door, close the blinds, cover the window on the door, and turn off the lights. It was obvious this wasn't just a drill. Most of us were crying. We were terrified. When the school is under a code red, students aren't allowed to be on our phones, but some students in my class disobeyed that rule. They Googled what was going on. There was a news alert of there being an active shooter at a high school, our high school. The school was very quiet. It was very eerie. You could hear a pin drop. About 15 minutes after we were put under a lockdown, we heard multiple helicopters flying over the school. All nearby police officers were told to come to the school. The road outside of the school was closed because parents were lining up around the gate surrounding the school, crying for their children. After what seemed like hours of sitting in the silent classroom, our door was broken down despite it being locked. Men ran in with large guns in their hands, the ones with lasers at the top. It was the SWAT team. My teacher wasn't wearing her school ID that day, so they pinned her to the ground and searched her. The SWAT team told all of my classmates to put our hands on our heads and to not move them. They made us get in a line, one SWAT member at the front of the line, one at the back. They said something along the lines of, "We're getting you guys out of here," and we all ran in a line through the halls as fast as we could, down the stairs, and out the main entrance. When we made it to the parking lot, there were tons of police officers and emergency personnel. Parents were still surrounding the gate. It turns out, there wasn't actually a shooter. A student at the middle school next door prank called 911 saying that there was a shooter in the cafeteria of my school. I woke up to the sound of helicopters. Earlier, girls had woken up to the sounds of gunshots. Just 2 blocks away from my campus that morning, terrorists had burst into a synagogue and murdered people we knew with meat cleavers. My school secretary's husband was murdered. My principal's study partner of 20 years was killed. My teacher's son-in-law and young grandchild were there. Her son-in-law was grievously injured. His son had managed to crawl out and run home to tell his mom. One of the terrorists was the guy who worked in the supermarket a few blocks away. He sent us the fish order every week. One girl had staggered into school shaking. She lived off campus and had walked past the synagogue as the attack was taking place. She saw a bloodied man running out, and he shouted at her to run away. Run she did, and as she ran away she heard gunshots. We were in shock. 2 terrorists had been caught. They thought there was another one who had escaped and was lurking around, waiting to murder some more people. Soldiers and police were locking down our campus, analyzing the weak spots in the perimeter fence. We were scared and panic-stricken. Classes were canceled, and everyone just walked aimlessly around campus, dazed and mourning. My principal was in school when he found out that his study partner was murdered. In Orthodox circles, study partners Shavruto share an unbreakable bond and become brothers. He'd learned with him every day for the past 20 years. He walked into our classroom looking 30 years older than he did the day before. His face was ashen, white, he was haggard and haunted. His wife told us that every day he would go back to that same synagogue and learn there, alone, an empty spot near him. He couldn't bring himself to get another study partner. We didn't know if there would be a repeat attack. My program was on lockdown for that entire day. Other schools were on lockdown for a week. Some parents made their children come home. The tension stretched on for weeks, and we walked down the streets with one eye over our shoulder. It was the scariest school lockdown I'd ever lived through.